Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bookshelf Odyssey podcast. I have a very special guest with me today, Carol. She's going to help me figure out these chapters in Great Expectations. uh, and we're covering chapters 23 through 26 of Great Expectations. So, Carol, welcome aboard to the Bookshelf Odyssey.
Thank you, Art. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to doing this for a while, having a guest on or uh, people from the community who are reading along with me to get your wise words recorded for posterity. So,
Yay!
all right. this, well, and I gotta say to start off that Carol and I both are drinking out of the same cup here. I don't know if you have tea or what in yours, but
I
I've
have
got.
water.
I do too. Yeah. I was gonna go with tea. I have a collection of Dickens themed tea I got for Christmas, but the Great Expectation flavor has caffeine in it, and I want to sleep tonight. So,
Sure.
so we're gonna kind of walk through this week's reading. And Carol has been one of the people who've been reading along with me, and I've really enjoyed your insight and thoughts on the book. And I've been wanting to open it up to some of you readers to come on and talk with me about it. I always just think it's more fun to have more than one person talking. So, but to start off with, Carol, what's your history with Dickens? Have you read much of him at all, or?
I read A Christmas Carol just this past Christmas season,
Mhm.
and I did that in preparation for reading along with you on Great Expectations. I've never read Dickens before,
Oh,
and I thought that sometimes the classics are a little bit difficult to get through if you're reading alone. So I
mhm.
wanted to read with somebody so that I could keep going and get acclimated to the atmosphere of the book, and
Mm.
and so far it's been great.
Wonderful. I was going to say you picked a good book to read your first one, Christmas Carol. That's a good one.
It
And
was.
it's skinny, so it doesn't seem intimidating. And
Yep.
then that's one that a lot of people are familiar with too. Just if you've seen a movie version of it, you've probably seen more than one.
Yep. It follows very close to the movies.
Hmm. It does. Yeah, that's probably my favorite book of his anyway. But yeah, well, that's one of the things I always tell people if they want to get into reading classics, but are maybe intimidated or, they're not sure or if it's new to them, find somebody to read it with because it will help in that. You just talk it over. And this is the third or fourth time I've read it, and I'm getting so much more out of it this time. Just not only slowing down, but talking with
Yeah.
people about it. This book is I've learned so much more. It's been incredible. But so you have not read Great Expectations at all, and have you seen any movie versions or anything of it? So
No,
all right,
no.
so we've got a newbie here for real.
But in anticipation of liking it, if you look here, there's a stack of Dickens books that
Uh-huh.
I really want to read.
Oh, wonderful.
There's about 4 or 5 more up there.
Yeah. Well, I always get excited when I can get somebody else convinced to try them out. So, uh, yeah, there's gonna be some that you'll like probably, and some that you're like, yeah, that's maybe not for me. It can be hit and miss like with anyone, but so what do you think of the book so far?
I um I am enjoying it.
Mhm.
I just read for pleasure. Um, when I sat down and really started making notes, anticipating tonight, a couple of thoughts dawned on me, and I'll get to those as we go through them.
Sure.
But I do like the book, and I think that he is a very good writer.
Hmm. Yeah, he is. I don't know how many times I say this, but he's one of my favorites, and it's probably borderline obsession now. So down down in my room. I have a bookshelf of just nonfiction work about Dickens, and it takes
Oh,
almost two shelves, maybe two and a half shelves of just different biographies and things. It's kind of a, I guess everyone needs a hobby, so that's mine. All right. Well, we've got a chunk of book to cover tonight, so I think we'll just go ahead and get going on it. And well, we pick up in chapter 23 and 24 is the next part, part 15, I believe. We have Pip continuing his time with the Pockets family, and he experiences a loud and boisterous family, unlike any that he grew up with. And I had to wonder what his thoughts were about this, because he's used to the more um, reserved, I guess, of Joe and Mrs. Joe, and now he's suddenly thrust into a family of bustling children, and it's just chaos.
yep.
So along the way, uh, as he's experiencing this family, he meets Mrs. Pocket, who seems a bit of a flake, to be honest. She's always talking about her father was a knight and her grandfather was this and that, and it strikes me as somebody comparing her to Mr. Pocket, that maybe he didn't marry so well. We meet quite a few characters in this chapter, and I actually had to go through it twice because I was starting to kind of lose who everyone was. But we have two other people who will, young men who will be studying with Mr. Pocket, Drummel and Startop. And I love how they're described. That it says, Drummel, an old-looking young man of a heavy order of architecture, was whistling. Startop, younger in years and appearance, was reading and holding his head as if he thought himself in danger of exploding it with too strong a charge of knowledge. And I love those descriptions, that I've just read so much, my head's gonna explode.
I liked how he described Belinda Pocket. He
Mhm.
said that she was highly ornamental and perfectly helpless and useless.
And yeah, I know we've talked about the women in this book, that most of them are just not really portrayed that well. And
I don't think any of them are. They're
right.
they're either they're either portrayed as dumb,
Mhm.
mean, ungraceful. Um,
Mhm.
that was one of the thoughts that dawned on me, is that every female in the book is not, no one's pleasant.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the only one is Biddy. Uh, I think she's kind and has been a good influence, or wants to be a good influence on Pip. But um, yeah, and I think about Dickens's life, and some of his views I think are kind of creeping into the story a little bit. And some of the things he struggled with. He was in or he viewed his marriage as an unhappy one towards the end, and he and his wife had separated and everything, and I wonder if some of that bitterness doesn't creep into your writing sometimes, which is unfortunate, because he writes with such tenderness and compassion, but it's always grieved me that he couldn't always show that same compassion to the people in his own life, that but divorce is never easy. Separation is never easy. So
And, yeah.
yeah, we meet another neighbor woman who I just delighted me. Her name is Mrs. Coiler, I think is how I'd pronounce it. And she's described as a toady. Now, I've heard that term, but I never actually stopped to look it up. So I wasn't quite sure what a toady was. So I looked it up, and it said that it's one who flatters in hopes of getting favors. And
Huh.
she's this flattering person, but I always imagine that as somebody who's um, I don't know. Well, I guess yeah, Toady would be like a henchman or something. Like that's what I thought it would be like.
Yeah.
You know,
But he
Mr.
describes her as being rather nosy.
Yeah, yeah, and let's see on my page 1 183 that said she had a serpentine way of coming close at me when she pretended to be vitally interested in the friends and localities. And I like Dickens will do this often where the name of a character will be kind of a pun on their character. And so here we have a woman with a last name Coiler, which then he describes her as being
Oh,
snake-like. So
yeah.
they she's kind of like coiled up like a snake. Yeah. And I thought, oh, that's great. Not a nice lady to be around, but and then we get to their dinner time, which is just seems to me like to be pure chaos. Get to meet get to know some of the children a little bit more. Mr. Pocket inspects them. I'm kind of getting vibes of uh, what is it? The Sound of Music. When all the children line up and the dad inspects everyone. And
Yeah.
I got to read that passage. It says, I thus became aware of the mutual relations between them and Mr. Pocket, which were exemplified in the following manner. Mr. Pocket, with the normal perplexity of his face heightened and his hair rumpled, looked at them for some minutes as if he couldn't make out how they came to be boarding and lodging in that establishment and why they hadn't been billeted by nature on somebody else. And it's like, you should know how all those kids got in your house, right?
Yep.
uh, and I actually, this is part of where some of Dickens' personality comes out from what I've read, is that one of the things he complained about his wife is that she kept having children. Like, okay, well, yeah, we'll keep it PG here, but you know how that works, right? um, so I really found that amusing. Mr. Pocket seems like he's a really nice guy, but his wife is maybe, like I said, a bit kind of flaky, scatterbrained. The servants basically are running the house, and it's just complete chaos.
Yeah.
um, any thoughts you have you want to add to this chapter?
I really watched Belinda Pocket, because every time she was confronted on something or someone spoke to her, she would always indicate that she was born to be a justice. She was born to be a duchess,
Mm,
and that's kind of the attitude she has. She really doesn't do a lot. She sits in the chair with her magazine and
mhm.
she looks at her husband, and the
Yep.
kids are running around like crazy. The nannies are falling over things and tripping, and of course, it's all their fault. And
Yeah. Of
it
course. Yeah.
was it is chaotic. Yep. In fact,
Yeah.
I think the books Dickens said there's 4 girls, 2 boys, a baby, and she was pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot of children.
Yeah. Yeah. And I I I understand a little bit now why Mr. Pocket's hair is just standing up on end. It's just, I don't know. I have 3 kids and I love them, but 3 is enough. you know.
Yep.
And then do you have any favorite quotes from the chapter or any favorite parts?
No, just when he said about Belinda, highly ornamental, but perfectly helpless and useless.
Yeah. I I just got finished reading Sense and Sensibility, and I don't have you read any Jane Austen at all, or
No,
no?
I'm
Okay.
just getting into them.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
uh so and that one especially explores this idea of bad marriages, that that they might have married for money, or for maybe some of it's for passion, but they didn't really stop to think about the wife's character. It always seems to be the poor wife, of course. But
Mhm.
um there's one couple especially that they're kind of minor characters in the book, but they really just she's a complete flake, and just hates everyone and can't stand her. And he's like realized that I married poorly and now I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And I kind of am getting that sense, at least from here, that that's the case with the Pockets, that maybe he didn't think about who he married or what, I don't know. And like I said, that could be some of Dickens's thoughts coming out in his writing. Although by this point, I'm trying to think, I think they would have been separated by now at this point in his life. But he often will draw stuff from his past to bring it up.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, that was one thing I wanted to bring out there towards the end when he's talking about how after dinner, Drummel and Startop and he and Herbert would go out um, boating, and he got someone to teach him or to help him boat, and it said that let's see, this practical authority confused me very much by saying I had the arm of a blacksmith. If he could have known how nearly the compliment lost him his pupil, I doubt if he would have paid it. It This is something we picked up on early in the novel, his fear of being discovered.
Yeah.
And I think it's starting to come up again a little bit. And I think I might have mentioned that but uh, when Dickens was a child, his father was arrested for uh, bankruptcy and was sent to the prison for that. And he went to work for a bottle blacking factory, and that just affected him so much. He was ashamed of it. He kept it a secret for almost his whole life. Told hardly anyone about it, and he wanted the world to see him as a gentleman, as a family man, as this and that. And there's a lot of his life that he lived in fear of being discovered,
Mhm.
uh, of those things. So I always find that interesting when I see those things kind of pop up in his books, especially in this one.
Yeah. I think that comes up later in another chapter when he
Hmm.
describes Mr. Pocket. He describes him as a grinder. And in my copy, that was one of the footnotes, and it talked about how um, Mr. Pocket was very smart and he was very capable and he excelled, but a grinder was somebody who helped other students cram for tests.
Oh, okay.
And so that was in another chapter.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Opening.
it was in this chapter. He was
Okay.
successful but became a grinder.
That explains the opening of chapter 24, where he says that Mr. Jaggers just told Mr. Pocket to tell him or to teach him just enough to get by, to hold his own. And he's not really going to be trained for anything. So it's like he's trying to help him cram to be a gentleman, and
Yep,
kind of the test is tomorrow. You got to be ready.
yep.
All right. Well, on to chapter 24. In this chapter, Pip comes to Mr. Jagger's office for some money to get his finances in in shape. He wants some spending money to help um, furnish his apartment, different things. And he gets in a discussion with Wemmick, who's one of my favorite side characters, just because of what we see in the following chapters. His Wemmick's home, and the way he refers to his father as the aged parent, and I don't know, I think it's adorable. And we see Mr. Jaggers at work, that everyone is just scared to death of him. And I love that he's described that Pip says he can't really tell if he's the prosecutor or the defender. It's because everyone's frightened of him.
Yep.
Yeah, Wemmick does extend the invitation to Pip to come to dinner, and he accepts that. He says that if at any odd time when you have nothing better to do, you wouldn't mind coming over to see me at Walworth, I could offer you a bed, and I should consider it an honor. I have not much to show you, but such 2 or 3 curiosities as I have got, you might like to look over. And I am fond of a bit of garden in a summer house. I don't know. I just like the way he describes his home, and is inviting him over, and says basically, Mr. Jaggers is probably going to invite you too, so be careful. It's like, man. What kind of a guy is this? So yeah, I guess again, just to briefly summarize this chapter, Pip is going to learn just what he needs to know to get by as a gentleman with no job skill at all. Which I don't know, to me it sounds nice, but after about a week of that, I'd get kind of bored, I think. So I think we see that Mr. Pocket, his character is he's a good guy. The other one is we find out those like face masks or face molds that Pip had noticed. Oh my goodness, that's they're like death masks taken of somebody after they've been hung, and
Yep.
Jaggers just has them there.
Yep.
Mhm.
He has those. And then Wemmick comments about how Jaggers told him to get get a hold of portable property. And so he has all of those charms hanging from what they call them death jewelry.
Mhm.
Call them, and he has those hanging from like his watch chain, and they kind of jingle. He's got a collection on him.
Yeah.
I thought that was really bizarre things.
It's really kind of, I don't know. I mean, just kind of gothic, I suppose. But yeah, like what kind of people does Jaggers have around that? It, my sense was that, he's telling Wemmick, you got to be ready to run for your life at a moment's notice. So have portable property on you. And
Yeah.
goodness gracious. Any thoughts you had on this chapter? Anything stick out to you or you wanted to talk about?
I think it was setting us up for the next two chapters.
Hmm.
Um, and yes, they do have unsavory people around them. Newgate Prison is
Hmm.
right in their backyard. It
Hmm.
talks about how Pip went outside and was just looking around, and there was the prison and the doors where, remember, he had that escort that told him
Hmm.
where the inmates come out to be hung, and it was all kind of morbid.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Newgate was the prison his father was in, I think. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check that one. But like you said, sets up the next chapter. What I thought was interesting is like in these four chapters, he's going to three different people's houses. He's at the Pockets, he goes to Wemmick's, and then he goes to Jaggers, and we see three really different settings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any quotes or anything you want to point out in this one?
Just that he called Jaggers' housekeeper a tamed beast.
Mm.
I thought that was bizarre.
I can't remember much about her, or if we ever learned much about her. Uh,
Well, she comes back two chapters later,
yeah, yeah, in 26, I think it is.
and
But
it talks a little bit about her physique and why she might be that tamed beast.
yeah, Dickens, your sexism is showing here. I don't know.
Yeah.
So this concludes part 15, and as far as cliffhangers go, this one was kind of a dud, but that's what I've enjoyed reading it by parts. Is you get that feeling
Hmm.
of what it's like to wait. Some of his books he would only publish one part a month, and that I tried reading a book like that once to follow his schedule, and I couldn't do it. I mean, after 2 weeks, I'm like, okay, I can't. I got. How could people do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so we go to chapters 25 and 26. Essentially, chapter 25 is dinner at Wemmick's house, or his castle, really. I absolutely love this home. Wemmick lives in this house that's built like looks like a castle, and he's got a moat and everything, and drawbridge, I think, and he lives there with the aged parent, and who Pip thought at first he was talking about some dinner or something, or some meat, I
Yeah.
think it was. But yeah, he says, as far as it goes, it's property and portable. You don't object to an aged parent, I hope. And then Pip says, I really thought he was speaking of the fowl, until he added, because I've got an aged parent at my place. I then said, what politeness required.
Mhm.
So I got to start calling my dad the aged parent, I think.
Aged.
Yeah. But I love that. And I and this is what I love about Wemmick. He's kind of a minor character in the book, but this is also why I like Dickens, is because his characters are so memorable. And to me, I love the idea that Wemmick has such an unpleasant job that when he comes home, he wants to keep it outside. So he literally is, yeah, closing himself off. He draws up the drawbridge. He doesn't allow any work talk at home, and he is taking care of his father, who is very deaf, poor fella, and they
Yeah.
spend a lot of time just nodding and smiling at him. But he cares for his father. It's just this really sweet relationship in this book, I think.
Mhm.
Um, which again, thinking about Dickens and his relationship with his father was very tumultuous. It's a He did patch things up towards the end of his father's life, but for a while they uh, weren't always getting along so well. And there's a long story with all that, but I like to see this. Pip is getting to see what a healthy relationship looks like, between father and son. Even though it's a very small family, I think he sees love and compassion there.
I think in the whole book, Wemmick so far is probably the healthiest person that Dickens has written about.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally healthy, mentally, emotionally.
Mm.
He knows that work is just a way to make a living, and yet he enjoys going home. He enjoys being a craftsman. Um, I don't know if he has any bad habits. We haven't heard that.
There's that part that reminded me of Mary Poppins. This one was Mary Poppins that reminded me of when they fire the cannon off.
Oh yeah. Yep, yep,
Because there's the old sailors on the house of the and Mary Poppins that do the same thing.
yep.
And he says it's the agent's treat, you know.
'Cause that's the only thing he can hear.
I know. That's so funny. Like, I wonder if that's why he's deaf. I mean, you're blowing this cannon off every night.
Yep.
But I love that. And if I ever were was fortunate enough to build my own house, assuming I could convince my wife, I might make it look like a castle with a moat.
Yes.
Any other thoughts you wanted to bring up on this chapter? It's
The only thing is we start to see a little bit more about Jaggers. He kind of
mhm,
brags about how he doesn't have to lock his house because no one would thieve from him. And who would dare do that anyway?
mm,
And it comes out more in the next chapter, but he starts washing his hands. Every time Pip turns around and sees him, he's washing his hands.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was trying to decide if that was um, OCD or if he's like Lady Macbeth, trying to wash the stain of some crime away or something. I don't know.
Well, I don't know about that. I do know it's a compulsion.
Yeah.
I know, he walks outside, he comes in, he washes his hands. He eats with food, he washes his hands. He meets with a person, and then before he meets with the next one, he washes his hands. He's forever washing his hands. And didn't he talk about he had a little closet turned into uh, a room where he could wash
Mm,
his hands?
mhm.
Yep,
Yeah.
little washroom.
Did you ever watch the show Monk?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it's reminding me of is wipe, wipe, wipe. Pip has I think a wonderful time and dinner with Wemmick in chapter 25. And then we go on to 26. If there's nothing else you wanted to bring up from the last chapter,
No,
sure enough, Jaggers asks him to dinner, and he brings along Dremel and Startop, and it's just a very bizarre experience
yeah.
overall. He gets it's almost like he antagonizes the boys to argue and fight. He tells Pip to to watch out for Dremel, but he's like, I really like this guy, but you got to watch out for him. But he's really, he's a crafty one, you know.
Yeah.
He seems almost cruelly treats his maid, Molly, that's her name. And like during dinner, he wants her to show her wrist, and she doesn't want to, and he basically forces her to. He took his hand from hers and turned that wrist up on the table. She brought her other hand from behind her and held the two out side by side. The last wrist was much disfigured, deeply scarred and scarred across and across. When she held her hands out, she took her eyes from Mr. Jaggers and turned them watchfully on every one of the rest of us in succession. And he's talking about how strong her wrists are and how strong her hands are, but that almost sounds to me like scars of someone who's tried to commit suicide, you know, and has scarred their wrist. But I wasn't quite sure what he was getting at there.
He did mention that they were deformed.
Mm,
And so I don't know if that was from birth or me, that's the tamed beast, right?
okay,
He referred to her as that in the other chapter.
right.
I
So,
don't know. I when I read that part though, I definitely felt her pain. She was pleading to him not to make her do
mhm.
that. And he forced her to do it. He took a hold of her hand and you know, showed the boys. I I didn't like that.
No, yeah, yeah, me either. Again, we're starting to see some of Jagger's character revealed that he's not a very pleasant fella to be around. But I always seem to recall Jaggers as being one of the quote unquote good guys, you know. But now I'm reading this and I'm not so sure because the way he treats her is horrible to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He talks about how he's when he's walking outside and people come up to him, they want to talk to him. He doesn't have time for them.
Hmm.
Goes in his house, washes his hands. If they're not in his office, he doesn't have time for them.
Hmm.
And there is such a thing as drawing boundaries, and keeping, but it seems like he's rude. He's to the point of being rude. And that really comes out in this chapter.
Hmm.
The other part that I thought was really funny is he was describing the walls
Mm.
and they had embossed designs on them. And he said that the garlands on the wall looked like loops. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
They were, they were nooses, is what he was referring to.
Yeah. Like, oh man, this I mean, combine that with the death masks he has in his office. I mean,
Yeah,
what a creep.
I kind of get the feeling he doesn't really like the people he works with.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can, I mean, you know, I can identify with that, but there's a point where it becomes unhealthy behavior, um,
Mhm, mhm,
which kind of brings us back to Wemmick and how he deals with that and perhaps a more healthy way where he goes home, he leaves his work at work and goes home and enjoys his time with his father and
mhm,
is friendly, at least up to this point, has been friendly and kind, I think.
mhm,
And right at the end of this chapter, we get as they're leaving, you know, Pip comes back and he finds Jaggers, you know, washing his hands. One because the boys had been arguing or fighting or something, and he also apologizes to Jagger that he hopes that you know, nothing that he wasn't offended or anything, and he says that it was nothing. But I like that spider though. Then that's Dremel. He's been calling him a spider. And he had turned towards me now and was shaking his head and blowing and toweling himself. I am glad you like him, sir, said I, but I don't. And then he goes on and says, no, no, don't have too much to do with him. Keep as clear of him as you can. But I like the fellow. Pip, he is one of the true sort. I don't know, just the whole way that Jaggers is watching Pip through this kind of just gave me the creeps. You know, it's like he was at first kind of watching him through the mirror, and now he's toweling himself off and just watching him. And I don't know what it is about it that's just kind of unsettling. But in about a month after that, the spider's time with Mr. Pocket was up for good, and to the great relief of of all the house but Mrs. Pocket, he went home to the family hole. It's like, oh my
It's
goodness,
not very complimentary.
not at all. Yeah. And I was trying to think about, was Mrs. Pocket about the only one who liked him, who liked Drummel? I, I thought maybe there was a connection there. They were, I don't know if you call it flirting or what, but they were at I don't know, two birds of a feather, I guess.
Maybe so. Yeah. I remember her talking about that. I just don't remember how she does, why she liked him so well.
I think it was because he was connected to a baroncy or something, and she is obsessed with this idea that someday she'll be a baroness
A
or a
duchess. A
duchess. That's it.
duchess.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, yeah. I don't want Mrs. Pocket coming after me here.
No, you don't.
I really enjoyed these chapters. This section of the book has felt different than the first one. It just felt like the first one was heading towards something, and the plot was coming, and now it's kind of settled down, and it's more of just Pip experiencing things
Mhm.
in the city as he is becoming a gentleman. And but I like that these four were grouped together, and we can see him having dinner here, here, and here, and just getting to know the kind of people that he had dreamed of being around.
He'll find out if he likes it or not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it was the last chapter or the last section I said, you got to be careful what you wish for. It's
Yeah.
sometimes it's not always what you expect, which I think is the one of the clever puns about even the title of the book. You have great expectations. You're expecting great things,
Yeah.
not just the money, but how many times have we expected something great to happen, but then when it happens, it's like, this wasn't that great after all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm an optimist, and I
Mhm.
think that Pip will learn that. I think that he will bring with him what he learned from Joe and hopefully find his way through there. I
Mhm.
think every young person dreams of, the other side of the fence, and
Mhm.
we all want to try it.
Mhm.
Some of us stay, some of us go back.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really what kind of book this is. It's a young man growing up and becoming an adult and making mistakes and having successes and uh, things that we all go through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of part 16. And actually, this is fun. This part was published on March 16th, 1861. So here we are about 150 years later, still talking about it.
Yeah.
That's neat. Uh, if only we could all write stuff that lasts that long, right?
I'm glad life isn't the way it was back then.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That was a hard life.
Yeah. One of those things where they say if you could visit any time period, what would it be? And this is one of the time periods I would want to visit, but emphasis on visit. I don't
Yes.
want to stay.
Yeah.
uh,
You know,
I love my air conditioning. I love my indoor plumbing. It's yeah, yeah. I'm a wimp. I'll admit it. Any final thoughts about the section we read from you?
nope, I'm just looking forward to keeping going.
Good. All right. Uh, well, the next section picks up with chapter 20. I've got Roman numeral, so I have to do the math in my head. Chapter 27. And I think it's just 3 or 4. I can't remember. Anyway, I'll have it in the show notes.
Yep.
And again, please comment and let us know what you think of these chapters, and we'll keep that discussion going either down below on the comments or on the Voxer channel, and we'll see what y'all think. Well, Carol, thank you so much for jumping on with me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
and we'll do this again. I'll try to maybe record at different times if others want to join in. I know some are really outside of a time zone that is convenient for anyone. Would love to have you in, and as we keep talking about this wonderful book, I'm really looking forward to seeing how I'm going to deal with the ending. But I won't say any more because I don't want to give you any spoilers. But it yeah, that's all I'll say. I better be quiet. But it's good. Don't worry, it's all good. But I'm just finding that I'm reevaluating some of my earlier opinions of the book, which has been a lot of fun. So
Oh,
thank you, Carol, for just your thoughts and joining in on this read. I appreciate it. So
thank you. Thank you.
you you bet. Well, take care and see y'all again soon.